Oh yeah. Yeah, this game definitely has no problems at all whatsoever. Perfectly optimized as all things should be. Hogwarts Legacy is finally here, and honestly, I'm very excited. What little bit of gameplay I've experienced so far, I've really enjoyed. But unfortunately, as we just saw, the game does have performance problems on the PC. I'm not sure if there's a pill for that, but supposedly there will be a patch for that on February the 10th. I will make a follow-up video covering the day one patch and ensuring that we do get the performance benefits we're supposed to get. However, I figured I would make a video covering what the game is like today before the day one patch, and this can be our foundation-based video so we can see how well the game improves over time. And also, I'm well aware that beanies do not go well with short sleeve shirts, but I did have a request to bring back the red shirt, and it's Harry Potter, it's Gryffindor, it's all related, so cut me a break, all right? Now, today we're using the RTX 4080 and the AMD Ryzen 5800X. Most of the benchmarks will be at 4K with ultra settings. We'll test ray tracing, frame generation, DLSS, and we'll finish up with a little bit of 1440p and 1080p benchmarks as well at the very end of the video. And if you want full system specifications, they will be listed in the pinned comment down below this video. Now, without any further ado, let's hop into it. Here, I'm just showing the settings of the game. And so, as I said before, we're gonna run everything on Ultra. The in-game benchmark also recommended that I run everything on Ultra based on my hardware. We're also using ray tracing, and we're also running everything at a native 4K. There's no upscaling of any kind, no frame generation, no DLSS, and VSync is turned off. HDR is enabled, but unfortunately my capture software cannot handle HDR, and so that's not coming through properly on YouTube. Now again, this is 4K Ultra with ray tracing turned on. Everything's maxed out with no upscaling of any kind, and as you can see, our average frame rate is below 30 FPS. This is a $1,200 graphics card. This is absolutely pathetic on so many levels. Now, I know a lot of people will say CPU bottleneck and all of that stuff, but at the end of the day, a 5800X 3D should not be performing like this with a 4080. The 5800X 3D is the fastest gaming CPU on the AM4 platform, and it even outperforms multiple CPUs on the AM5 platform. Furthermore, even big YouTubers like Hardware Unbox has used the 5800X 3D for the latest and greatest GPU benchmarks over the last couple of months. So the fact remains, I don't think the CPU limitation is the problem here. I do think there are coding improvements that can be made to help further optimize the game across the board for various different kinds of hardware. And again, that's why Warner Brothers has come out and confirmed there will be a day one patch with various different kinds of optimizations. I'll have some of those notes listed here on the screen for you to see right now. But overall, ray tracing performance is awful in this game right now. I'm getting a lot of Gotham Knights vibes whenever I turn on ray tracing. Basically, you get all the performance disadvantages, but you get none of the visual advantages of ray tracing at this time. And lastly, I did try to use Nvidia's in-game overlay to track latency, and unfortunately, that was not captured by my software, but I did take a picture of it. And as you can see, 4K Ultra with ray tracing enabled, we're averaging 202.9 milliseconds on our latency, which is absolutely terrible. But the good news is, as we change around the settings, the latency does improve. So let's go take a look at that now. And now I'm gonna disable ray tracing, and so we're running 4K natively with everything maxed out on Ultra. And as you can see, our frame rate is instantaneously going from below 30 FPS to a little bit above 60 FPS. And a lot of people would call this very impressive. You're taking the latest and greatest game on the market that doesn't even have all of its game optimizations yet, and you're able to max it out at a native 4K and have 60 FPS or 60 plus FPS on average. And in some cases, that is impressive. However, I've been using the 4080 for a couple of months now, and I'm used to running most of my games, AAA games, at 4K natively and have above 100 frames per second on average. That's what I'm used to. So for me, this is a little bit disappointing, but hey, at the end of the day, this is a single player story driven game. It's not like it's a competitive esports title, so we don't really need 150 plus FPS. Although that is nice to see when you do have it. So we can see by simply disabling ray tracing, our latency went all the way down to 52.2 milliseconds. That is absolutely insane. So clearly that shows just how broken ray tracing actually is in Hogwarts Legacy. There is definitely room for improvement. But now let's take a look at frame generation. Okay, so now we have a native 4K resolution. All the settings are on ultra, but we are now enabling frame generation. Now, in order to use frame generation, you need an RTX 40 series card. You have to enable hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. And if the game has multiple APIs to choose from, then you must choose DirectX 12. If you have DirectX 11 or Vulkan or something like that, frame generation will not work. It only works with DirectX 12. And as you can see, we now have an average frame rate of about 90 FPS. This is absolutely awesome. Now look, I know a lot of people have a problem with Nvidia, the 40 series cards, and frame generation. And I'm gonna admit, when Nvidia first announced frame generation, I said the exact same thing as everyone else. Fake frames. These are not real frames. Once again, AI crap that nobody asked for. We want native rendering. And I've gotta be honest, I thought about it, I've experienced it, and I don't really care at this point if they're fake frames or not. I cannot tell the difference. Even if you go and look at Digital Foundry's video talking about frame generation, they are nitpicking on the finest details possible in order to show a problem. In the grand scheme of things, the average gamer with a naked eye is not about to notice any type of real image issues of any kind. I know I haven't. I've talked to my friends who have 40 series cards. They haven't, and I've tested it in Spider-Man, and now I'm testing it here in Hogwarts Legacy. And honestly, the game feels fine, it plays fine, it looks fine. I love frame generation and I highly recommend it. However, my big problem here is the over-reliance on frame generation and DLSS as a whole by developers. Frame generation and DLSS should be the icing on the cake for games. It shouldn't be the cake, and developers have lost sight of that. Now, there is one concern with frame generation, and that is latency. It does add more latency to your games, but I've come to realize that is game dependent. Some games it adds significantly more latency, some games not so much, but it's also hard to get a real reading on it because Nvidia forces you to turn on Nvidia Reflex, which helps to reduce the latency. So it's hard to actually know exactly how much latency you're introducing. But in this case, with Hogwarts Legacy, 4K, Ultra, frame generation enabled, no ray tracing, no other DLSS upscaling enabled or anything like that, our latency here is 39.6 milliseconds. That is incredibly low. But let's move on, enable ray tracing, use frame generation, and see what our performance is like with that. Okay, so now we're at 4K, Ultra settings, ray tracing is back on, frame generation is on, and now we're taking a look at our performance. And as we can see, we have an average frame rate of about 60 FPS. And overall, that is fairly respectable. It's a little bit more than double what we were getting before without frame generation, so that's great. But at the end of the day, this is not a true 60 FPS experience. As you see, we have tons of drops, lots of stutters. Frame generation simply can't keep up here. And in some cases, we dropped all the way down to 25, 30 FPS there for a brief moment. Our 1% low is 6 FPS. This is honestly awful. It's all over the place, and our average frame rate has now dropped down to 45 FPS, and so that is just awful. Ray tracing here is truly, completely unoptimized. But what happens if we keep the settings the same and now go and turn on DLSS quality mode? And here we are for all the marbles. This is literally pulling out all the tricks we have. Frame generation plus DLSS quality and 4K ray tracing, everything's turned on here. And as you can see, we have an average frame rate of about 85 FPS. Now, this is significantly more respectable and playable. However, at the same time, we all know what DLSS actually means. This doesn't mean we're playing at a native resolution. So even though it's technically 4K, it's actually not real 4K. Basically, our resolution is being downscaled to 1440p, and then AI is attempting to re-upscale the image to 4K, and this is basically giving us 1440p performance with a similar look and feel to a 4K image. And over time, DLSS has gotten significantly better. And so I do have to give credit where credit is due. And overall, it's doing a great job here. And so far, this is the only way I have found where you can turn on ray tracing and enjoy Hogwarts Legacy without any type of major lag or stuttering. I'm not saying it's a perfect experience, but it's definitely a playable experience. And now to finish out the video, I want to do a very quick test of 1440p and 1080p. And so starting off with 1440p, everything turned to ultra, no ray tracing, no frame generation, no upscaling of any kind. Here's what we're looking at. As you can see, we have an average frame rate of about 108 to 110 FPS. And overall, that is really good. That is substantially better than what we saw whenever we were doing 4K native with everything maxed out with no ray tracing, no upscaling, no frame generation. And if you want to see more 1440p testing with Hogwarts Legacy and the 4080, let me know in the comment section down below and I'll definitely be sure to make a video on it. But for now, I figured I would just show it off as a quick sneak peek, if you will. Basically, if you have a 40 series card or maybe even a higher 30 series card, and if you're gaming at 1440p, then I think you're going to be okay, because 1440p is nowhere near as demanding as 4K. Now, there is one problem here with 1440p, and that is the utilization. If you look at the 4080 usage right there, you can see we're down in the 80s to low 90s at times, and then back to the low 80s in certain cases in terms of overall utilization. Now, a lot of people would say this points to a bottleneck at 1440p with the CPU. And maybe, possibly, but again, given that this game has known performance issues, I'm leaning more toward the fact that this is an optimization issue. And so I'm looking forward to that day one patch and seeing if it can help utilize more of the GPU at lower resolutions. And now for my final test, just 1080p. We're dropping the resolution down, keeping everything else the same. No ray tracing, no upscaling, no frame generation, everything set to ultra, 1080p testing. And as you can see, unfortunately, we have an average frame rate of about 76 to 80 FPS, somewhere in that ballpark. That is absolutely pathetic and definitely points to terrible game optimization. Now, I did see something like this in the past on another game, and somebody left a comment saying it's a bottleneck, it's an obvious bottleneck. But in this particular case, once again, we've already confirmed the 5800X 3D is still a very fast and very relevant CPU. And Hogwarts Legacy definitely has optimization issues. Warner Brothers has already confirmed that, and there's a day one patch coming. Same story, just a few minutes later. You already know the drill. So I'm betting performance with the CPU at 1080p will improve after the day one patch. But for now, I figured I would just show you what performance is like at 1080p. I'm not really sure who would be using a 4080 at 1080p anyway, but if that's you, let me know in the comment section down below. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do me a favor, hit that like button because it goes a long way in helping me out. Let me know what other kinds of benchmarks you want to see from Hogwarts Legacy or maybe some other game. And if you're new, please get subscribed. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, rock out.